And we're recording. So today what I'm going to do is I'm going to start a project from scratch. It's going to cover everything that's on the sprint review and more. And the idea is to not just say, oh, well, you can pass this test, but can you make a React app from scratch? And can you connect into an API and display information? So the goal is to cover props, components, the two hooks that we've covered in class, which is useState and useEffect, Axios for accessing our library, which is going to be the Rick and Morty library again, and how to map over an array that you get back from that. So any questions that you have immediately, or just come off of mute, and if not, then I'll just get started.
Sounds good.
Excellent. All right, so typically what you'll do is if you're making a new create React app, and this is something where you could technically go into production with a create React app, but there's usually better solutions. But we're going to stick with it only because it's the most basic way of making a React app. Kind of, most tutorials do it. It's a workflow that most people are used to. And that may change soon, but for right now, it's consistent. So one of the things you'll notice is I'm going to be using something called NPX. So what NPX is going to do is it's going to go to a repository, download the command that we're about to type in, run it, and that way we have the latest version of React. So typically what I'll do is I'll do a npx create React app, and it would be at latest, and then period. So this will probably fail because I have a folder that I'm in currently that has a number. So if it's got a number at the beginning, it's not going to like it, and it'll throw an error. So I'm going to demonstrate that right quick. Maybe we'll see. That's the way it was for the longest time, but I haven't played with it in 18, so this is kind of an experiment.
I would just like to comment that I absolutely love the cat background.
Yeah, that's actually from Rick and Morty. That is Schrodinger's cat. It's either dead or alive, and
nice.
At different angles in space. So this one here, it actually did work. Imagine that. Normally, oh, so we got all these warns and all kinds of stuff. Let me see here. I'm pretty sure that'll still work. Let's see what happens. So let's do an npm run start. And let's just see if this explodes. Actually, I'm going to open up VS Code first. So, and move this around. So we'll do npm run start and see if it explodes. Not worried about any of these Webpack warnings or anything else. There we go. All right, so it looks like that worked. So earlier versions would not allow you to install it in a number starting file here. Don't know why, but it always complained to me, and it looks like it's working just fine. So ignore that. I learned something new. So the second thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to go in and kind of do a little bit of little bit of discovery in here. And so one of the things that you'll notice that they have this public folder and a source folder. The source folder is where all of your React type stuff goes. Your public folder is where the server gets its HTML file, for an example. So if we were to inspect this page and take a look at these elements, you'll notice that you have this doc type HTML. So you got a doc type HTML. HTML language, English. It's got some scripts that are injected into from React, so that doesn't matter. But then you've got inside of your head, you've got your meta tag, your icon, your viewport, your theme color, description, website created using Create React App. So this is where it's getting all of this information. So this is like your base. Something's dinging like crazy. Let's go ahead and see if that'll stop making as much noise. Who is trying to get a hold of me? One moment. Let me mute this. There we go. Never can tell which one's dinging. So in the HTML document, you can see that we just basically have your HTML head, body, and that's the same thing here. So we've got a head and we've got a body with stuff in it. So what I'll usually do just to freak people out is I'll select everything and just delete it. If I save this, it's going to crash the application because it doesn't know what to mount to. So if I go to my console, it'll say something like create root, target container is not a DOM element. So if I regenerate my HTML by doing ! tab, and I just save it, you'll notice that this says document up here, and I can change this to something more semantic, like Rick and Morty API. So sounds good. So we've got the Rick and Morty API, but we still have this create root. So, I mean, I can technically go through and start trying to figure out what the problem is. So if I go back over here to our index.js, this is loaded by the npm start to start modifying this index.html file. So if I open up my index.js file, well, you'll notice that we have this React DOM create root, and then we have this query selector right here, get element by ID root, right? So what if I didn't want it to be like a div root or something, right? So normally what they do is they've got something like this, where you've got div ID root, right? And I can save that, and it should be back with the little rotating icon. So this is the query selector that index.js is working with. It's literally looking for on the document, so this dot get an element by ID. It's an ID root. So if I didn't want this to be like, let's say that I wanted this to be like, I don't know, a main with a class of container, for an example, or you know, a div. Oops, missed this other one. You know, or a section or an article or whatever you wanted to use that might be semantic for your needs. You know, if I wanted to use this class container, we're going to have to use something else to get, instead of get element by ID, because it's not an ID based. So last week, what was one of the things that you would have used to get a class? You can come off mute if you want. We use a query selector. And then since it's a class, you want a period. So this will give us it will query select this and then run our React on this. So any of anything that's on this create root will be rendered here. So we'll go ahead and save that and get it back to where it's working. So if I go back to elements, you can see our title is Rick and Morty API. You can see that our body now is a div class container instead of a div class root. And then you've got your app with all the other stuff inside of there. So this index HTML file is just an HTML file. There's nothing special about it. It's just usually just has one div and usually something that says, hey, you need JavaScript enabled to see this page, which I'm not going to put that in there because it's not really all that important. Secondly, if I'm not using any of this other stuff, like I don't really technically need strict mode. You know, I don't need these web vitals. Let's see, I think that's about it. So if I save this, this should still be working. So we haven't broken anything. So this is just rendering our app. So if you notice, our app is coming from our current directory and the app.js file. So in our app.js file, this is all the stuff that's being loaded. So your header, image, there's a p tag with edit source app.js and save to reload. So like if I, you know, get rid of this code block and it says source like that, and I just open this up, then you notice is edit and save to reload, or I can just get rid of this p tag completely and it automatically updates just like you would with HTML. So that's kind of the basics, I guess would probably be a good idea to call it, of how React sort of works in the background, or at least from a workflow perspective, is it starts with this HTML file and then index basically makes this container or the root a variable called root. It then renders whatever's in app. So anything that's returned from app, it's going to render. So that's pretty much that. So let's go and take a look at the Rick and Morty API. So if you're not familiar with the Rick and Morty API, they have all kinds of different characters, and looks like they're up to 826 characters, 126 locations, 51 episodes, and the server is currently green. If I go to the documentation on this, what you're going to see is a whole bunch of stuff. Like, we haven't covered GraphQL or any of this other stuff, but if you start looking under character is kind of like the one that's pretty neat. So like they've got this character schema, and all a schema is what are your key and value pairs going to look like. So like there's a name of the character, there's a status, are they alive, dead, or unknown? What species are they? What gender are they? You know, an image, so a link to the character's image, and it's 300 by 300, and most are medium shots or portraits, since they're intended to be used as avatars. So fairly low resolution, but easy to style and everything else. There's other things as well in here. So one of the things that you'll notice is that they have like this get single character link here. Now what I can do is I can go to this link, and this is going to give me who that person is, in this case inside of an object. So if I wanted an individual character, I could do that. So I just go to API character and then whatever that is. So character 1 is going to be Rick. Character 2 is Morty. Character 3, I believe, is Summer. Okay, that was Summer. I was almost going to say it was Beth. 4 is either Beth or Jerry. It's Beth. And then 5, I think, is Jerry or Jerry. So this is just a way of us getting an individual object from here. So let's start doing something kind of a little bit more interesting with our app.js. I'm going to close out of the index.js and index.html because we're going to start with our app.js. So if we just have a regular, normal, everyday variable like with a name, name, Brian, status, alive, what we can do is we can go into here and directly access that. So I'm going to change this to a JSX file so I have some more interesting linting that I can do. So if I change this over to a JSX file instead of a JS file, VS Code has a built-in linter that will let me do things with the emit abbreviations for HTML. So like if I type P and hit tag, it gives me a paragraph tag. So in JSX, if I return with a parentheses around this, this is going to return this single div. And technically, you could probably get rid of the parentheses and just return a div set like this. And it would still be valid. So I can save this and go back over here and notice that it hasn't crashed. There's just nothing on the page. So what I can do is I can say, I can put curly brackets in here to break out of JSX and type something like character.name. So if I save this, this should show up. And it didn't. I think I do have to wrap this in parentheses. Let's see. Yeah, so now we've got Brian right in the middle of the page because there's CSS. I'm just going to remove the CSS for right now. I think there's also CSS in the other file, but it's close enough. So this parentheses is telling us that that's in JSX. So if I return anything with parentheses, it's in JSX. If I try to do something in curly braces, that's in JavaScript. So think of it kind of like switching between two separate languages, because that's what it is. So if you are returning a parentheses, you're returning JSX. If you want to break out of JSX and return something like JavaScript, you just put it in here. So character.name is valid JavaScript. And I can even do character.status. So it'll say Brian is alive. Just like that. So we haven't even gotten into storing state or anything else, but what if we were to want to make this where you have more than one object? What you could do is you could wrap this inside of an array. Like this. And you can add in another one, right? So we have name, We'll do Johnny number 5. So now, this is where we're going to kind of take a nosedive. So first off, character now is no longer an object, it's an array. So if our array type is wrong, then it's just is. There's no information in here. Console, no problems. Hey, Belle. And let's see here. Yep. And so we've got, we now have an array. So if I wanted to do a character name and I wanted the first one, I could do like a 0 in here, right? And then if I wanted a second one, I would have to keep adding. So Brian is alive. And if I wanted to do the next one, I could do like character 1 status and name. And now we've got Brian is alive and Johnny number 5 is alive. Dating myself on that quote. So the idea here is that, you know, I don't want to have to, every time that somebody modifies an array with more information, I want to be able to display all of that array. So what we can do, instead of manually putting these out here, you know, let's call this characters, since it's a list of things, so plural. So what we can do is we can break out of JSX mode by doing the curly braces, and we can do characters.map. So what this is going to do is this is going to run the map method, or the map function. I forget if it's an actual function or a method, but not that big of a deal. And we're going to pass in a callback. Yeah, if I can type today. And this callback is going to give us 2 different things. The callback is going to give us whatever is in element 0 or 1 or 2 or however many elements there are. And we're just going to call that character, since it's a single object. So the first time that this loops through, it's just going to give us this object right here is going to be, it's just like you called it, character equals this object. The second time it loops through, it's going to be character equals this object. So pretty simple and straightforward. Now, if you'll notice, normally what we do in a callback is we pass in this curly bracket. So what we can do instead is pass in a parentheses, because we want to return one of these p tags, right? And this other p tag can just go away. So what we're looking for is character. Well, we've got a mistake now because there's no longer an array associated with character, just an object. So if I save this, then we've got Brian is alive. Hey, Jasmine. And Johnny number 5 is alive. So what this is doing is this is looping over this map here. It's giving us a paragraph tag with this character name is character.status. If I check in the console, it's giving us an error. It says each child in the list should have a unique key prop. So it can't tell the difference. React isn't smart enough to tell the difference between this p tag and this p tag without a key. And so if it has to do anything to it, and it becomes more important later on, usually in labs, you'll start noticing problems if you don't have a unique key. For right now, I'm just going to put in something like key. We're going to equal this to something. So there's two things that you can get from this callback is character and an index. So this key, you might try to concatenate a string together. So like character dot name. No, I needed curly brackets. So $ curly brackets, and then like hyphen index. So this would be Brian -0, for an example. So that would be something that's somewhat unique. And if you wanted to make it even more unique, you could put in, you know, app app characters map, and then Brian -0. So now if I save this, and let's just inspect one of these. So you'll notice this doesn't really have like a key on it or anything else. It's just a p tag. So that key on here is not super easy to find. So we've got Johnny number 5 is alive. So that's nice. If I were to go into the console and do a let's do a query selector. I need a document. Sorry, document. Query selector. That is not what I wanted. There we go. Document.query selector, and then we did say our first p tag for an example. So I'll just console log the document.query selector. You'll notice that we're able to take a look and inspect this p tag. So in React, they're not going to show you your key in here. It's not in here. But React uses it internally to know the difference between, you know, a super unique key. Like I just minimized that, of course. Good, I only have one open. Scroll this over a little. Like app characters map Brian 0 or app characters map Johnny number 5 1. It can tell the difference between them because I gave it a insanely unique name in this case. So a key should be something maybe more than just an index or a key or something, but you can get away with it on a small application if you just had like an index in here.
Brian, may I ask a question?
Mm-hmm.
Like that index, where does it come from? Is it like getting automatically assigned to each?
So like the characters.map, the map function is going to fill these with data. So it's going to automatically run this, and it's going to pass in this character object, and then how many times that it's looped starting at 0. So the index starts at 0. So the first time it goes through and it gives me the Brian object, it's going to be at index 0. The next time it loops through, it's going to give us the Johnny number 5 object here, and this index is going to be 1. So it's provided for you. You're just naming the variables. So like you call this, you know, Bob if you want.
It's just basically like maps thing that it assigns and it has an index in it, right?
Yeah, it's just like you looping over with like a for loop starting at 0. So, and that can come in handy in lots of different ways, but for right now, we're just using it as a way of turning this into its own little component. And by the way, this is its own component. That p tag is a component because we're using it in its own way. So let me put this as a section instead of a div. Let's be semantic about this. So if we have a section, we could also put in, say, an article, and then move this p tag up into the article. And so if I save this, it should be basically the same. But if I look at the actual elements, you'll notice that we have 2 articles, and that's more semantic than just having some p tags everywhere. But if we notice this console, each one of these childs in the list must have unique key prop is still there. It's because this article is the parent. We've got to move this key. Almost missed one. We've got to move this key up into the article because that's the parent. You can't put the key just anywhere you want. It has to be the one that is being returned by this. So I can save that, and this will work just fine. So this would get really nasty right here if everybody just used this style where they just map and then just had this component miscellaneous stuff just everywhere. So it might be a good idea to go into your source and make a new folder and call it components. And then make a new file. We're just going to call this character list. Well, we'll say character card, and I'll use JSX again. So notice how I'm using a capital C. So what this capital C is going to do is it's semantic to people that are in the industry that this is going to be a component. So if you use a lowercase, it's not a component, it's just a regular JavaScript file. But if you have a capital letter, then it is a component. And that's just the way that people see it. So used to, if you're running an old version of React, you have to import React from React. Ever since 17, I don't believe that you have to. But I'm going to go ahead and show it to you because like a lot of people are still running like React 16.8 or React 16.9 for whatever reason, and don't have where it's automatically imported. Next thing you need to do is you need to define a new variable. And typically this is going to be named the exact same thing as your file. It doesn't have to be. If you ever start using Java, you're going to find that there's a lot of things where you have to match everything. This one you don't have to, but in general, just go ahead and just follow that same convention. We're going to set the character card equal to a new function. And we're going to do a return on here, and we're just going to, I don't know, copy this article here. Okay. The last thing that I'm going to need is to export this. We're going to do character card. So we have this character card here component, and if you don't export it, you can't import it into your app. So very important to export. So I'm just going to get rid of that since I was just trying to show you how that's going to work. Now, if you'll notice, we don't have any characters or bobs or anything else. I'm going to call this index again. So this right here will technically render an is and an article and a paragraph tag with the letter is in it. I can get rid of this completely, and I can import in my character card. So, and if you'll notice, it says import character card from the current folder, so / components, and then character card doesn't need to have JSX at the end. It already knows. So if we want to render this component, we just need to put this into its own little world right here. And let's go ahead and save it and see what it does. Oh, we've got this character is not defined, index is not defined, character is not defined, all these not defines. So what did we do wrong? We haven't passed any information from this app component into our character card component. So the other thing is this key, even though that's on the return, this key is no longer going to do anything. We need to put this back. So I'm going to cut this. And I'm going to paste this onto our character card. So our key is going to be equal to this long, huge string because I'm crazy. If I save this, let's refresh. Oh, look at all this. That's beautiful. But there is no longer a key problem in here. It's saying index is not defined. It's saying all kinds of cool stuff. It's mad. So Bob is no longer there. It's now index. All right. So let's go to this first one. Character is not defined. So it says character card JSX line 4. So if we go to character JSX line 4, you'll notice that we have no variables that are defined anywhere in this file. So there can't be a character anywhere if it's not defined. So you might think, oh, well, I can just do, well, it's an object, right? So let's save it. And let's refresh. Ooh, well, there's no more errors, but it's not displaying anything. So this didn't solve anything. So we can't just say, okay, well, our character needs to be defined. We actually want to turn it into something. We actually need data from its parent. So how can we pass data down? We can do that by using props. So props is just an object. It's the first thing that most people freak out about is they have no idea what props are. This key here, this whole thing that I've just highlighted is a property. So if you hear props, it usually just means property. So what I want to do is I want to pass down some information from one area down into the character card. And what I can do is I can pass that information by saying Brian equals this guy, right? So I have just passed a key value pair inside of an object into character card. Still erroring out. We haven't fixed anything. But let's console log something that we're going to pass in. So we'll call this Surfin' Barbie because props, right? It's whatever name you want to call it, but in the real world, I would never use Surfin' Barbie. I would just call it props. So this is an over exaggeration that's here to show you that props is nothing to be afraid of. So if I just console log my props, so Surfin' Barbie. Now, mind you, it still crashed and everything else, but if I go up here, you'll notice that we've got this key value pair. So I've got Brian, just this guy, Brian, just this guy. Oh, well, there's also this this key here, but we're not going to get that. There we go. Let's see if there's any information here. No, I'm going down a rabbit hole with that. We don't need to. So Brian is just this guy, right? So we're not getting any information from anything other than Surf and Barbie here, right? Let's take a look at how we did that. So I passed down a key and a value on this. And we can check inside of the body here. We've got a div class container that's exploded and everything else, right? So if I go back and I look at this app here, so we've got a key and a value. So the difference is we don't have a colon between this because that's just going to throw an error. But all it's doing is passing this information into Surf and Barbie. So Surf and Barbie is literally just an object. So we'll just say Surf and Barbie is equal to an object with Brian colon just this guy. Now that's what it's doing. So anytime you see props, just know that it's an object. That's all. There's nothing scary about it or anything. You just need to look into the object and see where it's coming from. Any questions? Props are usually the one thing that blow people up.
And it also passes the key as well with the branch of this guy.
Yeah, it passed the key as well, but the whole thing exploded. So that's probably why it doesn't show any information on here, because it basically just threw up everywhere. So we don't really want to pass in Brian, do we? That doesn't really seem all that nice. So we want to have maybe character. So we'll pass in character, and we're going to have to break out of JSX mode and go into JavaScript and pass in this variable here called character. Because remember, this is just whatever you named it. You could call it Surf and Barbie as far as I care. It'd just be a little weird to have Surf and Barbie, and then whatever the name is. Oops, I didn't copy that, did I? Oops. Character. So this is whatever name you want to call it. So if I say whatever your name you want to call it is equal to character, then refresh and find some of this information. There we go. Whatever you want to call it is the name. So I can name it whatever I want, but it doesn't make any sense to call it whatever you want to call it. Just name it the same thing as what you're passing down, and it'll be just fine. It's more semantic this way. So character is equal to character. Just know that this is what you're calling it, and this is the data that you're passing in. So now about Surf and Barbie. So what we might want to do is make a new variable called character, and we're going to want to set this to Surf and Barbie dot character. I'm going to save that and reload. And we're still exploding. Oh, I haven't saved the other one yet. Whoops, my bad.
Yeah, Brian, I like that you call all of these different names, because when I was taught these, just like props equals props and the other component as well, and everybody was confused, including me.
Oh yeah, everybody always gets confused on props. So that's why I try to ask lots of questions at this point, because it's a good time to learn it. So we've got Brian is alive and Johnny number 5 is also alive. So we're passing information down, and you'll notice that we have this Surf and Barbie. We're console logging Surf and Barbie. So I can open this up and see that our character has just one chunk of data, and if I go to the next loop through, the next character has another chunk of data. So it's run this component twice. So that says that we've got 2 characters in here. So if I add in, you know, another object in here, we'll put Val in there since he's here. Are you alive?
Still alive.
Excellent. All right. So if I had, so Val is alive too. So everybody's alive. That's great. So now if I refresh this so that we get a nice clean, you'll notice that it looped through this component 3 times with 3 different types of information. So the character is me, Johnny number 5, he seems very robotic, and Val does not seem very robotic. So Surf and Barbie is just props, right? So a lot of the times what you'll see is this format here whenever you're trying to, oops, I hit delete. All right, you'll see this format where you've got const character equals Surf and Barbie. So, or props in this case. So what these curly brackets do is it says, look inside of Surf and Barbie and see if there is a character. If there is a character, make a new variable named character and set it to Surf and Barbie.character. Kind of like what we just had with the character equals Surf and Barbie.character. It's the exact same thing, just it looks prettier and it's a little more professional. That's all it is. So that is called destructuring when we do it like this. And you could also, you know, if you had Brian in here for whatever reason, so. You could also put in like comma Brian, and it would pull that out. And then you just put Brian in there. So if I save this, then we've got, oh, is that working? Oh, I didn't save this side. Whoops. So Brian is alive and is just this guy. Johnny number 5 is alive and is just this guy. Val is alive and is just this guy. So you can kind of see I can pass data right here just by doing whatever I want to call the variable name and then equaling it to whatever I feel like, really. You know, you could put an array in there if you wanted to. It doesn't really matter what the data is. You can stick it into an object. You can stick it into this. It'll work the same. So I'll get rid of this because we're going to get rid of the is just this guy thing. So try to keep things a little simple with this. Try not to pass tons of props, only things that you really need. You know, my day job, we passed down probably 50 or 60 props, but in this, don't go crazy with it, especially when you're first getting started. It'll come with time. Some days you'll send 6 things down, or 2, or 1. This whole sprint, you could probably get away with just 1. So, oops, I forgot the ending P. There we go. Let's save that. So now we've got some information. So we've kind of covered props. Is anybody still stuck on props and wants me to cover it further? Or Surf and Barbie, rather? Wow, dead silence.
So we're basically like Surf and Barbie, just usually we call it props, right?
Yeah, exactly. So like I could, oh, what do you call it? I think it's rename symbol. I always forget what the thing is. So we could delete that and call this props. There we go. So now props is props is props. but you could literally call it whatever you want. This is your variable name. Anything that's in that parentheses up there, that's you. You can call it anything. You know, you can call it the Bobiverse if you want. That's F2. I got to remember these things. So we'll do F2. Cool. So we'll do Bobiverse. There we go. You can call it whatever you want and it'll still work because it's your variable.
And in FJS, we say character equals character. And then we say in the character card, we say character equals props. Is it like the same characters or we just like?
So this would be one character in this case. So this one, because we're mapping through our characters. So it's going to loop over these one at a time. So character is literally just this object right here and nothing else. And then the index is 0 on the first one. And then the second time that it loops through, this is going to be index 1, and then it'll have this object. And then val will be index 2, and it'll be this object. So the character is going to be character.name is val, character.status is alive. So it allows us to loop through this one at a time and send this information down to character card. And then in character card, character is the name that we gave it. And this is the same name here and here. So on line 27 and line 4, those are the same words. So if I, misspelled this, it's going to crash. This cannot read properties of undefined name, blah, blah, blah. I mean, it's angry, right? And so if that's misspelled, then it's going to blow up. So this and this need to be named the same. And then get rid of all the lovely things. So now if we take a look at this character, this is just bobiverse.character right here. So everything on this line, as soon as it turns into this character card, it turns into Bobiverse. Bobiverse is equal to an object. So you can use dot notation to access anything in Bobiverse. So Bobiverse.character, right? So let me, we're going to call this Rickiverse, since we're about to hit Rick and Morty stuff. So now we're going to start hitting into a little bit of a hook. So we haven't even covered hooks yet. So we basically just took props and components since that was the most popular at first, and then everything kind of equaled out. So we're going to kind of cover everything going down the line. So the next thing that we need to cover is some hooks. So we're going to do state. So you may be asking yourself, well, Brian, you're storing stuff here, right? Well, if I push to this, like let's say that we had some form that pushed to this, this array, React doesn't know that it has been changed. So you can change this all you want, and React just, it has no idea of anything about this variable at all. It's just gonna complain. So what we need to do is we need to turn it into the state. So what we need to do is import our useState from React. Sorry, I don't do semicolons. Some people do. And we haven't used anything yet. And if I wanted to turn this into a useState, what I would do is I would make a new const. And useState is going to return an array. And you remember that destructuring where I used the curly brackets, equals props? Well, we're going to do the same thing, except it's not returning an object, it's returning an array. That array has two items in it. One of them is what we call a getter, and the other one is called a setter. So it won't be props, it's going to be, so when I run this useState right here, this useState is going to return an array that has exactly two things in it. The first element 0 is always going to be the getter, and you can call that whatever you want, in this case, characters. And the second thing that it returns, so element 1, is going to be the setter. So you've got a getter and a setter. So let's move this thing into useState. There we go. So I am passing in whatever my initial state is into here. So what this is going to do is if I run the set characters function, then anything that's inside of set characters is replacing characters on the next render. So it'll become more important here in a little bit for me to show this. So I'm just going to do a console log, and we're just going to say it rendered, right? So this console log is going to show up anytime that it re-renders app. So if I save this, it should only say it rendered once. Let's refresh. So it rendered exactly one time because there hasn't been anything changed. So if we were to use the Rick and Morty API to set a list of characters, so let's go back over here. Where is it? Documentation. So if we go to get all characters, and I look this up, so we're gonna go to this, and you'll notice it's a little weird because it's still returning an object. It's not returning an array. So this object, so we would have whatever came back as data dot results is going to be our array, and we would want to make that so that it's overwriting our characters. So we don't want Brian status alive. We don't want any of this information here. We want that to get completely wiped out and show, you know, Rick and Morty stuff, not short circuit stuff or learners or the LA on the call, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to need to set this character using Axios. So this slice of state is modifiable. I can change it, and React knows about it because it's running this function. So when you run this function, it tells React, says, hey, something's changed. This is going to get replaced after you're done rendering, and we want you to re-render the stuff that has this in there. So it'll go through and re-render the components that have characters in it. So if you had another component that doesn't have characters, it's not going to re-render it. It's just going to skip over it. Makes it a little bit faster. So what we want to do is we want to do a useEffect on our Axios call. I haven't really even gotten into Axios. Let's go into a little bit of Axios before I do the useEffect. So if I go to package.json, you can see your dependencies here. This tells you whatever libraries you have installed in this project. So right now we've got some testing libraries. We've got React, React DOM, React Scripts, Web Vitals, but no Axios. So easiest way to do that is quit. So Control-C exits even on a Mac. And we can do npm, not npx, install. So I is short for install with npm, Axios. Axios. So what this is going to do is this is going to download Axios, put it into the node modules folder. It's going to update our dependencies and put it right after this at testing. It'll be between testing and React, whatever Axios version it is. And it's going to modify this gigantic file called package.lock.json with the information from Axios. So those are the three things that this command is going to do. So right now it is downloading it. It just modified the Axios file. And it is going to, and then it modified the package.lock.json so that it had the Axios in it. I'm not going to open up package.lock.json because it's usually a very large file and it'll complain. But that's just the generated file. So don't delete a package JSON, but if you have to delete something, package.lock.json can be regenerated most of the time, or it's saved on some server somewhere on a Git repository. So we'll go ahead and we'll start this again. And now React has access. React has access to Axios. Yeah, we don't care. That's complaint. There we go. Notice how it's already complaining here. I'm not worried about any of these warnings. If it's a warning, it's not a big deal. Error, slightly bigger deal. So I don't really need to worry about character card because this is already giving us some data. We might come back and make it prettier, put some images in it, things like that. But let's use this nice wide screen, close out a package lock or package.json, and we're going to import Axios from Axios. And this gives us access to Axios from that npm install. So does anybody know why I can't just do an Axios get here with, you know, this this right here? So we'll just copy this. And then just set my character from there inside of like a then or something. So the Axios is going to get information. If I did that, it's then going to modify set characters, which tells React that the entire app needs to be rebuilt and re-rendered, which is going to set characters again, which is going to trigger another re-render, which is going to set characters again, which is going to cause another re-render, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, until you're out of API calls and your machine is locked up and you have to actually physically reboot it. Not saying that I've done that from experience. Maybe I have. But what is a good way of getting around that? We can use that useEffect, right? So if I do the two main ways of doing a useEffect, the first one, you take two arguments. So we've got a callback here, and then we have a dependency array. So assuming this dependency array is completely empty, if that array is completely empty, it's going to run this exactly one time at the end of a render. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to console log this runs after the first render. Save it. And let's see it call me a liar. All right, so notice how it rendered. It's updated these three components. And then the last thing that happens is it ran that code inside of there. So now if I move this up and we do our normal axios.get. So this axios.get is the exact same thing as me going up here and hitting enter, by the way. So what this is going to do is it's going to return a promise, and you'll sometimes see things like result equals Axios.get or something like that, and it has to be an async function and blah blah blah. Easiest way of making this thing work is to just put in a then, pass in a callback, and put whatever variable you want to call. I mean, I usually use res. Then immediately console log, so you can inspect what on earth came back from Axios, because every API is different. They're all evil, especially when you're first starting out. Some of them are more evil than others. Rick and Morty, it's not evil. It's actually pretty easy to understand. So now if I come over here, oh, I haven't done anything with it. So we've got console log res. We're going to save it. I'm going to refresh. If you'll notice, we have like this whole thing. So we got it config. So res.config is a bunch of stuff that nobody in the right mind should be looking at ever. Headers, no, a lot of that makes sense to me, but why? Request. No, I don't want to deal with any of that. So let's look at data. Oh, that looks a little bit better. So we've got res.data is the only thing in here that I really want. So let's go over here and we're going to do res.data. So we're going to console log and see what on earth is coming back from res.data. I'm going to refresh. So we've got info. Well, that's useful, I guess, sort of. Take a look inside of here. So we've got 826 Rick and Morty characters. Our next, oh, that's kind of neat. So it's the same endpoint here, rickandmortyapi.com/API/character. And then this is a parameter. So question mark page equals 2. I'm sure you guys remember that API key from doing the NASA project. So this question mark page equals 2 says that we can go to page 2 and get more information. That might be nice to get as a bonus today. There's 42 pages. Previous, there is no previous. Results. Oh, look, that's an array. That might be more interesting. So res.data.results looks like the information that we might want to get. So let's go back over here and do results. If I refresh this again, notice how now we're console logging out 20 objects, right? So instead of me console logging this, we already know what we want here, right? What we can do is we can set characters, and it is going to replace characters with whatever is in res.data.results in this case. So we're going to set characters. We're going to pass in res.data.results. And this could be different from the sprint, and it probably is. It's probably going to be something like res.data.data or res.data.who knows what. I mean, they seem to change it up a bit. So now, please note, we're getting information from the API and it's running exactly one time. It's not looping a bunch of times. Let me go ahead and refresh it so we can see what happened. So we'll take a look at how this life cycle happened. So it did that console log, it rendered, right here. And then it ran this code here. So it looped over the character card 3 times with Brian, Johnny number 5, and Val. So here's Brian, Johnny number 5, and Val. And then it says this runs after the first render. It ran the Axios and got us our res.data.results. And then it re-rendered that app. So it went again to right here. And all of this information is now replaced with whatever came back from Axios. So instead of it like pushing or popping or slicing or splicing or whatever, it completely replaces everything in characters. And then it opens up and it runs this code down here. It maps over characters and throws out all of your characters with the correct information. So it deleted everything that was up here, Brian, Johnny number 5, and Val, and it replaced it with Rick, Morty, Summer, Beth, and Jerry, and blah, 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 right? All the way down to Ants in My Eyes Johnson. So that initial state that we have here, it still rendered it. So what if this failed? Right? So I put in a thing that made no sense. Well, notice how it didn't update the state. So the state is still showing something, at least. So it hasn't, it's not correct, but it's there. It shows it, and it's giving us a name is not resolved error and a bunch of other neat stuff. So what this has done is this has given us a little bit of information. And allowed us to take a look at what's in here. So let's make this look a little bit nicer. So if you'll notice, the results are you've got a name, you've got alive, species is human, gender is male. This image might be nice to put in there. So let's go back over and take a look at character card and make it look a little prettier. So we might have a header with, oops, sorry, not caps, with character name, maybe an image, and it was character.image. Alt tag, you always want to put an alt tag with something descriptive of what it is. So character.name is good. And we can put some more details in here. This is usually character.gender. Character, oops, sorry, I need curly brackets. I think I'm spelling that correctly. Character name is a character gender dot character species. Who is status? So let's go back over here. Oh, it's kind of nice. Not styled very well, but you can generally tell that this is correct-ish. So we've got Rick, Morty, all by just changing a couple of lines of code. I added 2 lines of code to this and made this line a little longer with more stuff. So in 5 lines of code, instead of 20 times 5, so a lot more, 100. Instead of 100 lines of code, we have now generated more information. That's the power of having a component. So we've still got a little bit of time if anybody wants to see how the useEffect works when you change something. I also want to kind of take a look over here. So
I don't know if I'm getting ahead of where we are, but can we do like a drop-down menu, like review how to do those?
yeah, we're going to learn forms next week. So that would probably be out of scope for this, but yeah, drop downs. That's
like you click a button and it.
Yeah, we're going to learn drop downs next week, day 2 actually.
Good.
Actually no, day 1 you're going to learn that. Day 2 you're going to learn how to validate that the information in that drop down has been selected. And day 3, I forget. I guess maybe it is day 2 that we learned that part. I think it's 2 days of forms, 1 day of validation to make sure that somebody put in a correct email address type stuff, and then the last part is how to test, which personally I think they should have already started testing, but whatever. That's my opinion. I think learning testing is more important than people give it credit for, but that's me. So let's go ahead and add in something here. So with React gets angry when you don't have a single parent to return. So if I wanted to add, say, like a footer and a header to this, what I'm wanting to do is to put these empty characters here. These are called fragments. They don't really do anything other than allow it to return an empty nothing. So it's going to return that and then loop over the innards. So if I wanted to put a header in here and say a footer, and let's say, oops, we change this to say main. Since I'm old, I can do it. So in our header, let's say that we have a button, and we're going to call this previous, and then a button called next. Let's see how that looks. Great. So we got previous and next. They do nothing. So do we remember when I console logged this res.data, there was results and there was something called info?
Yeah, with the page.
Yeah.
Thing.
Let's take a look here. So this is our info here. So they tell us how many of these characters there are. They tell us how many pages there are. They tell us what the next page is, and they tell us what the previous page is. So we already know our current page is page 1 because next is page 2. So we probably don't need to have this information because we could concatenate that. But let's just kind of go down this rabbit hole right quick. So let's make a new slice of state underneath all this here. And we'll call this page. Sounds good.
Mm-hmm.
We'll call it set page. And we're going to make this page 1. Yeah, notice how this is in blue. It doesn't have quotes around it. That's an actual number. So we will know how many pages there are. So it might be a good idea to have another one called max pages, set max pages. And I would say our original max pages should be set right here, right? So to 1. So it says, okay, well, if we're on page 1, then both the previous and next buttons probably should be disabled so you can't click them. So let's make a little function in here for our next button. So we'll start with the next button. So what we might do is make it so that when you click the next button, it's going to increment page, right? So we're going to do set page. And because we're replacing page, what we can do is we can take the existing state and add 1 to it. And let's do the previous button. So page -1, right? So when somebody clicks this button, so we'll do an on click. We're going to run previous button. And next button, right? So let's just go ahead and just save it. And yeah, there's not anything here. Let's put some console logs in here. So let's watch page in a useEffect. So if I want to watch a useEffect, if I have something in my dependency array, it's going to look for a change. If anything changed on page, it reruns this function. That's literally what this means. We're just going to console log page. So we'll go and refresh. If I go next, it should say 2. Go previous, it should say 1. Ooh, 0. Not good. Okay, so we've got some bugs because I shouldn't be able to go below this. So notice how we're at -10 pages, or if I click this long enough, it would be over 42 pages. Shouldn't go over 42 pages ever. But there's no logic behind that. So how can we determine if these are disabled or not? So what we can do is we can make more state, because I can. So you've got next disabled, set next disabled. And we'll say false. Okay, so what we've got is we have 2 new slices of state that say true or false if next or previous are disabled. I'll kind of show you how this works right quick. So if we put in disabled equals, and we do previous disabled, and say we do another one, disabled, next disabled. I save this. So if I inspect this button, you'll notice it's just a regular button because disabled is false. But if I go and I change this to true, well, this is the next button, not the previous button. So we'll now inspect this. You'll notice now it says disabled on here, and it's grayed out, and I can't click it. So what we might do is we might have in, say, some sort of a function that says, hey, we want to make these true or false. So we'll say true. All right. So we'll save this. And does anybody know if this runs after the first render? This one with a page in it? Or does it only happen when you have a page that changed? Let's find out. We're going to refresh, go to console. So does this run after first render? Absolutely. Shows page 1. This runs after the first render. So both of these are running after the first render. This useEffect and this other useEffect are both running after the first render. So what we can do in here is we can try to figure out if next is disabled based off of what page we're on. So we'll do next disabled. No, it's going to be set next disabled, sorry. We're going to want to set next disabled to either a true or a false. So we're going to want to try to figure out if our page is less than or equal to max pages, or less than max pages. That's probably more accurate. So if it's less than max pages, then it should be enabled. So since this evaluates to a true, we don't have to do any, ternaries or anything else like that. That's good enough. So let's do set previous disabled. And this is going to be the opposite. So what we're going to do is we're going to look for page is, page is less than, sorry. Got my things wrong. Page is greater than 0. So if page is greater than 0, then it should be okay. But we want it as a 1, sorry, not 0. Because we're always going to start on page 1. Let's see here. Maybe I do have these backwards. So page is, yeah, page should be less than max pages. And page is greater than 1. Good way to backfire it, Brian. All right, so I've got these backwards. Did I mess this up somewhere? This is previous. Hmm. I'll get it eventually. So if I go next page, previous disappears. And if I go previous, my next disappears. So I've got something backwards in my logic.
Did we define max pages already?
Yeah, we've already defined max pages up here. We just haven't done anything with it. So right now it's just one. So I think the problem is I've got my next is previous. And my previous is next. Save it. All right, so there we go. So now I can't go previous, but I can go next. And I can go too many steps. Anyway, so let's go ahead and set our max pages. So it's set to something other than 1, and we'll see if this thing breaks first. So in the same area, we can do, we'll do set max pages. And we're going to do res.data.info, and we'll go over here and take a look at what came back eventually. There we go. And we'll notice that it has pages is 42. So that's going to be the maximum number of pages that we can do. So res.data.info.pages. If I save this, we should be able to go next. Let me refresh. And I'm going to get rid of some of these console logs since they're getting in the way. And we're going to get rid of this. All right, so refresh. All right, so now we've got this page 1, 2, and I should be, no, it didn't work. I got a console log more. Un momento. Has anybody else had anything backfire on them today?
Of course.
Welcome to the world of programming, right? So we've got set max pages. We're setting it to res data info pages. So if I save this and refresh, so we got only showing page 1. If I go next, it says 2 and 42. So obviously something's not quite right somewhere. No, we'll just go and make this renders a page as well. So you remember how we had this question mark page equal thing? So what we can do is we can just concatenate this or interpolate this like this with $, curly brackets, page. So what this is going to do is it's going to take the page and put it in right here. So let me save this. And we're now on page 2, page 1. And if I click the next button, see that they're both disabled, of course. So let me look at our next. So our next disabled. Yeah, see, this is backwards again. So this is actually supposed to be next. And then previous. But it was doing exactly the opposite of what we wanted. So we'll see. So next, I still can't get it to work. I think I've overcomplicated it. Let's just get the stupid thing to work without disabling anything. So let's comment these two out. Just make sure it goes between pages, then I'll mess with it later. So we can go next, 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 or previous, or next. And I'll keep doing a refresh each time because we've got this page in here. So it's literally looking for a change on page, and it reruns your Axios get because page has changed. This variable in here is going to change, and it's going to get again. So you're just refreshing the data to whatever page. As for the disabled, I don't know. Maybe it's just late and my brain's not working, but it's sort of disabled, just not when I wanted it to. We could probably just put it inside of here. So, so we got set max pages, and we could probably do something like, I don't know. Let's see. I'm going to change these to false so I can see when they change. We're going to put it inside of the Axios call because I feel like it. So we're going to do the next. So the next button needs to not ever go past 42 pages. So this should be page is less than res.data.info.pages. Save it. So notice how this is now disabled. So I've got something wrong with my logic. So I'm going to flip this around because nope, I accidentally clicked the wrong button. All right, so let's see if we can go to page 42, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I'm looking right here. 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. Hopefully I don't get too many problems. All right, so we're up to 30. Going too fast, 41, and then 42. Oh no, I can't get 43. I have no idea why that's not working. So we're gonna have to go ahead and put this in here as a ternary because reasons, I don't know. So if it is, it's true or false. I'm explicitly saying true or false, which is really weird for me. See, so we're on page 41, and now that next button is complaining. So we'll do greater than or less than or equal to, and let's see here. Oh no, the next button is permanently broken. Maybe I've got this backwards. Now I got to go back over to 42. Or he's like, you're going to run out of your API calls. I'm like, yep, but it's totally broken. Let me set my base page to 41. So be a lot easier to test. All right, so now we're on page 41. If I go next, it still isn't working. Oh no, we've broken it. Yeah, I have no idea what I'm doing with the logic on this, obviously. So let me see. Yeah, it's not gonna work. Okay, I have completely made a fool out of myself with trying to make a disabled button work, and I don't know why. The logic is escaping me tonight.
It's
That's
a normal process of developing the software.
Oh yeah, you bang your head against a wall, and it could be that I've been up since about 6 o'clock this morning, and that's almost 13 straight hours of programming. So that's okay. I'll live. Well, I wouldn't say 13 hours. I'd say 2 or 3 of those possibly were just meetings. So, I'm trying to think. I'm going to say the page into next pages. Previous disabled and next disabled. I'll get some better logging. Because that's going to bug me until I go to sleep. I'm going to have a captive audience. So right now we're at false, false. So this runs after the first render. So disabled is false. So that's probably where my logic is faulty, right? So if we're already at false, that means that it's not disabled. So we want it to be disabled. So that's true. See, I keep reversing. This is like a reverse logic quiz. So we're going to want both of these true, which means that they don't show up. So what we're going to want to do instead is we're going to want to say when it's out of range. So our previous button needs to know when it's below 0 or below 1. So less than or equal to 1. So we'll do page is less than or equal to 1. Did I put that on my next? Okay, so it needs to be greater than. So greater than, because we're wanting to get a false. So if it's greater than 1, no, stupid thing. Okay. I'm still set to 42. That's probably what it was. So let me flip this. So it's less than 1. It's not less than 1. That is. Okay. So we want less than or equal to 1. Now our previous button is disabled. Our next button needs to know if the page is greater than our max pages. All right, so if I go next, ooh, say that previous still isn't right. Let me refresh. Oh, there we go. So the previous button doesn't allow us to go below 1. Let's go ahead and not use all of our API hits and change this to page 41. So we can see both of them should be lit up. So we'll refresh. Nope, won't allow it. So our next button is still buggy. So we want equal to max pages. Refresh. That's weird. All right, so 41, false and true. So this true here is saying that there isn't any place to go after this. We want this to say that it's false. So if it's false, it's going to be, because page is not greater than max pages right now. It's because page is 41. It shouldn't be greater than max pages. So therefore it should be false. Oh, that's right, because max pages is still 1 on the initial render. We've got to do res.data info.pages. So we're not, max pages hasn't been set yet. This has just been called. It hasn't affected anything after it in this until it re-renders the page. So that's my fault. So res.data.info.pages is there. To let us know what the max pages are. So yeah, I don't think that we need max pages at all. I don't think we need to set max pages either, because we're not using it anywhere else. So we can get rid of this. All right, so this is page 41. If I go next, and we're still not there. All right, so let's see, where did I mess up? So we've got page, which should be 41. 41 is not greater than 42. So that should be returning false. Refresh. That's 42. We're gonna unless I'm grabbing the wrong info. It says 42. So 41 is not greater than 42. So this should be false. So that's disabled is not false. Okay. So that says that it is not disabled here. So if we go next, it should turn to true because it's 42. Let me see. Should be, this should be true. Losing my mind. All right, so now if I go next, there we go. Now we got the edge case. Only took me, what, 30 minutes to get 2 buttons working? That's horrible. I've set a new record for coding a couple of buttons, but this is like way outside of, you know, what's on the sprint. It's just going down a rabbit hole is more or less what I was doing. So I can get rid of this console log useEffect and the it rendered useEffect, this console log. Now I should be able to save this and have a, oh, change this back to page 1. All right. So I can't click the previous button. I can click next, and then previous it goes to here, but we don't ever go below page 1. If I change this back to 41, we go to page 41. If I go to page 42, I can't go to page 43. And I can still go previous. Netflix executive. I should be able to go down to page 1. Eventually. A lot of characters. All right, now we're getting there. All right, and then after page 1, we can't go previous. Any other feature requests anybody has? Any other questions, concerns, comments? Quiet group.
Not really. I don't have any questions. No.
Did I just confuse everybody for the last 30 minutes? Maybe.
No, you're good.
You guys are happy that you see somebody else struggling with this stuff every once in a while?
Maybe.
That was a
Perhaps.
logical, that was just a logical thing that I was running into, and I didn't have the logic right. So that's weird for me. Usually I'm pretty logical. But yeah, sometimes we all struggle with, is this true? Because disabled, if disabled is true, then it's not showing up. So it's the exact opposite of what you think it is. That's probably what was screwing me up, because I probably had it correct at one point, but I may have also been dealing with stale state and all kinds of other things, but it doesn't really matter. We got it solved. So yeah, technically you don't have to have any information in here. You just need an empty array. So I guess I could run into one more neat little thing is, so what if my initial state isn't an array? What if it's a string? What do you think is going to happen? Well, it can't map over a string. That's going to crash. It says characters.map is not a function because you can't map over a string. If you see characters.map or something.map is not a function, that means your initial state was not an array. Or whatever you passed into it is not an array. So biggest thing is console log. Like you'll notice here, first thing I did as soon as we got information back, I console logged it immediately. Didn't wait to even start doing anything with it. I was just looking at it and making sure it was what I wanted. And then I kept going until I found exactly the object that I wanted or the string that I wanted or whatever. And then we set the characters with it's like res data results. Pretty simple. Anybody else struggling on arrays, objects, things like that? Do you guys go over style components any? I guess not. Okay. If anybody doesn't have any other questions, I'm going to go ahead and end this, and we'll talk to y'all later.
Thank you, Brian.
You're very welcome.